It was one of those mornings when everything that could go wrong did. The alarm didn't ring, the coffee machine broke, and the bus that usually arrived at 7:10 never came. But even in all that chaos, Ethan Wells still smiled faintly as he buttoned up his wrinkled shirt, tied his son's shoelaces, and whispered, "We'll make it through, buddy." His 7-year-old son Noah just nodded sleepily, holding onto his backpack like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. Ethan was a single father, working 2 jobs, doing everything he could to make life bearable after losing his wife 2 years ago in a car accident. That morning, he had no idea that a single act of kindness would change his life forever, and almost destroy it first. If you believe kindness deserves a second chance, and that good hearts still matter in this world, then please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Let's spread more stories that remind us of the power of compassion. Ethan's day began with rushing through the crowded city streets of Boston, coffee in one hand and hope in the other. He worked as an office assistant at Langford Holdings, a large corporate firm that prided itself on punctuality and discipline. Being late even once could mean a warning, being late twice termination. He was already on thin ice. The rent was overdue, a school lunch balance was empty, and his boss, Mr. Carver, had made it clear. One more mistake and Ethan was out. As Ethan hurried across the intersection, he noticed a woman struggling to get out of her car, parked by the side of the road. She looked pale, one hand clutching her stomach, the other waving weakly for help. Without a second thought, Ethan ran toward her. She was heavily pregnant, her face drenched in sweat. Her voice trembled, "Please, I think I'm going into labor." Ethan's heart raced. He helped her back into the seat, called 911, and stayed beside her, calming her, reassuring her that everything would be okay. Minutes felt like hours as they waited for the ambulance, and when it finally arrived, the woman clutched his hand and whispered, "Don't leave me." So he didn't. Ethan rode with her to the hospital, helping the nurses when they needed him to, fetching water, making phone calls she couldn't manage between contractions. He wasn't family, he wasn't even a friend, but he stayed. When the doctors finally took her in for delivery, Ethan realized with dread that his shift had started an hour ago. Panic hit him like a wave. He thanked the nurses, left a note with his number for the woman, and sprinted out of the hospital like his life depended on it. By the time he reached the office, breathless and sweating, Mr. Carver was waiting by the entrance with that cold, satisfied smirk that Ethan had come to dread. "Wells," he said curtly, "you're 2 hours late. You know the policy." Ethan tried to explain what happened, that a woman was in distress, that he couldn't just walk away. But Mr. Carver didn't care. "We don't pay for your charity cases. Clean your desk. You're done." That moment shattered Ethan's world. The job wasn't glamorous, but it was everything. It paid for Noah's clothes, their small apartment, the electricity bill. He stood there, surrounded by co-workers who looked away, pretending not to notice. The humiliation was heavy. He didn't argue. He just nodded, collected his few things, and left quietly. As he walked out, his phone buzzed. It was a message from the hospital nurse, thanking him for his help. The woman had given birth to a healthy baby girl. That small joy hurt more than it helped. Days turned into a blur of rejection emails and missed meals. Ethan spent his days searching for work, his nights holding Noah close, pretending everything was fine. But one evening, as they sat eating instant noodles by candlelight after the power was cut, Noah asked, "Dad, are we still lucky?" Ethan smiled faintly, hiding his tears. "Yeah, buddy," he whispered, "we're just waiting for our luck to find us again." A week later, Ethan was sitting in a local diner, applying for another job online, when a woman's voice called from behind him, "Excuse me, are you Ethan Wells?" He turned, startled. It was her, the pregnant woman from that morning. Except now, she wasn't just any woman. She was dressed elegantly, her posture graceful, her presence commanding. She smiled warmly, holding her baby girl in her arms. "You helped me the day she was born. I never got to thank you properly." Ethan stood up awkwardly, unsure how to respond. She gestured for him to sit, ordering coffee for both of them. "My name is Clara Langford," she said softly. The name hit him like thunder. Langford, like Langford Holdings, his former company. He stammered, "You mean the same Langford?" She nodded. "My father founded the company. I'm the current CEO." Ethan's heart sank. The irony was brutal. The woman he had helped was the one who owned the company that had just fired him. Clara seemed to notice his discomfort. "I heard what happened," she said gently. "Mr. Carver told me about your termination, but he didn't mention why you were late. I only found out yesterday when I saw your name on the hospital records. You stayed with me when you didn't have to. You could have walked away." Ethan shook his head, embarrassed. It was just the right thing to do. He said quietly, "I couldn't let someone suffer when I could help." Clara smiled, looking down at her baby. "That's rare these days. Most people wouldn't even stop." She took a deep breath, then looked up. "Would you be willing to come by the office tomorrow? I'd like to discuss something." Ethan didn't sleep that night. He didn't dare hope, didn't dare imagine that anything good could come out of this. The next morning he wore his only ironed shirt and made his way to Langford Holdings again, the same place he'd left humiliated just a week earlier. This time he was escorted straight to the top floor. Clara greeted him warmly, this time seated behind a grand mahogany desk. Mr. Carver stood in the corner, visibly uncomfortable. Clara gestured for Ethan to sit. "I reviewed your employment record," she began. "You've been a dedicated worker, always reliable and respected by your colleagues. The company failed you that day, Ethan. You were punished for doing something profoundly human, and I can't let that stand." She turned to Mr. Carver. "You fired him without cause. That was unethical. From this moment you're relieved of your duties." Mr. Carver's face turned pale as security escorted him out. Ethan sat there, stunned, barely able to process what had just happened. Clara smiled. "Ethan, I'd like to offer you your job back, but not the same one. I want you to be our new community relations manager. You've proven that empathy and compassion guide your decisions. That's exactly the kind of leadership this company needs." Ethan's throat tightened. He tried to speak, but words failed him. His eyes watered as he whispered, "Thank you. I don't know what to say." Clara smiled kindly. "Just promise me one thing. Don't ever stop being the kind of man who stops to help." From that day on, Ethan's life began to change. He moved into a better apartment. Noah got to go to a good school, and for the first time in years, hope filled their small world again. At work, Ethan led initiatives to help employees in crisis, set up volunteer programs, and built a culture where kindness wasn't punished, it was rewarded. People respected him, not just for his story, but for his heart. One afternoon, Clara visited his office with her baby in tow. She placed the infant gently into Ethan's arms and said, "Her name's Grace, because that's what your kindness showed me that day, grace in action." Ethan smiled, tears in his eyes, as he looked down at the baby cooing softly. He realized that sometimes life's most painful detours are the ones that lead us exactly where we're meant to be. Months later, Langford Holdings made headlines for its new humanitarian policies, with Ethan Wells at the forefront of the campaign. People around the city began recognizing his story, a man who lost everything for doing the right thing, only to gain something far greater in return: purpose, redemption, and a new beginning. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Your support helps us share more real, emotional stories that remind the world that goodness still exists. And before you go, take a moment to comment below. What would you have done if you were in Ethan's place? Sometimes, one small act of kindness can change not only someone else's life, but your own, because in a world that often forgets, Ethan's story reminds us all, being kind is never a mistake. It's the very thing that makes us human.